Hey, Steve Magnante here at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts with a 1968 Ford Mustang Fastback. By this point in time, the Fastback models were no longer being called 2+2s as they were in 1965-66, but rather the Fastback nomenclature is more appropriate. Now, these were not as popular as you might think. In a total of 317,404 Mustangs built in 1968, only 42,581 buyers opted for the Fastback. Why? We'll get to that in a second when we get inside this car. But in the meantime, this one sort of presents like a car from the movie Bullitt. Steve McQueen and that sinister black Dodge Charger flying through the streets of San Francisco getting abused and beat up. This is a good tribute to that sort of a car with the Highland green paint, torque thrust all the way around, and a special engine under the hood. Let's have a look at that now and lift up that hood. Okay, it's a small block. We all know today that the actual Bullitt Mustang from the movie was a 390 car, S-code. That's okay. This is a small Ford, probably a 302, perhaps a 351. But with that said, it's got iron heads, aluminum intake manifold, a small Holley 4-barrel, hooker-style steel tube headers, which is a fine thing. And I'm sure this is probably good for 300 horsepower anyway. And a nicely presented underhood area. I see the VIN right here is interesting, 8F02. 1968 model year. F02 is the Fastback body style. C is the 289 two-barrel. But here's something really weird. The sequence number 100094. This is the 94th car built on that particular year. I mean, they stack up. So 94 cars. Could it be a pilot production car? Probably not. Usually those are under 50. But within the first 100 cars built right here, number 94. Kind of special right there. Okay, let's go inside and see which transmission we're dealing with. This does my heart good. A stick shift in this one here, just like the Bullitt Mustang back in the 1968 movie by the same name. And the difference on this one here is the Hurst shifter has a white shift ball on top that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5-speed overdrive transmission, which is just fine. Probably a Tremec TKO 600 style transmission. That fifth gear is an overdrive, something that did not exist in 1965, 6, 7, 8, 9, when these things were being used regularly by drag racers and street racers alike, and let alone Steve McQueen in the streets of San Francisco, which was a 4-speed car. But this 5-speed car right here could certainly get up to probably another 20 miles per hour top speed versus a 4-speed direct drive. So kind of cool, nice touch. I do see a digital dashboard on this, so it has a bit of a Pro Touring angle. The whole dash lights up with digital numbers. See if we can get that happening. Yeah, right there, here it is. So a mile per hour, tachometer, oil pressure, temperature, all these things displayed in green LED. Very cool, very modern, very Pro Touring, or Resto Mod, if you will. You pick your nomenclature. And an aftermarket steering wheel, which has the look of an exotic piece with brushed aluminum center spokes and a smooth ring, and a very nice example inside. The foam padding right here, new for 1967 as part of the federal mandate to have crash protection for occupants of the car, but otherwise quite stock looking. Now, one thing about this one here is that it has the optional folding down back seat, which increases the amount of cargo volume in the back. You can flip that down and load things through the trunk. Of course, the days of the Fastback Mustang II in 1974 were still several years away when this car was built, but again, that's pretty good for utility. And the trunks on these things are pretty small, but with that fold-down seat, you can get a lot more done at the hardware store with your 68 Mustang Fastback. Beneath the graceful Fastback body style, we see some differences that were added for 1967 and 68, the first major restyle for a Mustang, beyond the wider engine bay to accommodate 390 big block engines for the first time from 67 onward. But they also see there's sort of a crease going down the center of the roof panel, and also the Dutchman panel and the trunk lid, and even right here in the glass, a little sort of subtle line right there. These are things that were not on the 66 Mustang or the 65 or the 64 and a half, but 67 and 8, they finally grew these little details here. They were gone for 69 as Ford smoothed out the roof on the Mustang. So the 2+2, a very special car, the Fastback as well. And these vents in the B pillars are definitely functional. In fact, there are sliders inside of there so you can exhaust, stuffy air from inside the car just by opening a slider, and fresh air goes in and out of the side vents right there. So they're functional, and they do something very good for the car. Now, of course, here is the the trunk lid, which is kind of small. And before we get to that, you can see right here something that was part of the Mustang lore from 1964 and a half, but they were called 65s, but you get the point. All the way through the Mustang 2 of 1974, which ended the trait, is the center-mounted gas fill right here. 74 Mustang 2, it went to the side of the car, but all Mustangs previous to this have the center fill right here. Kind of a cool touch, like a Le Mans filler from Le Mans racing in France on all Mustang 6-cylinder V8, all of them. And by this point in time, the hinge right there did away with the cable and the theftable or stealable cap that could be easily stolen. But again, that problem is solved. Still has the great look on it. And of course, GT, that's the suspension and handling package, which is only available with V8 Mustangs. This was a C code, 2.9 barrel when it was born, but now it's something far more potent. Okay, inside the trunk, what do we have here? Let's open the trunk with the key. Right here we can see that the trunk lid is actually quite short, so the amount of space available to load things into the cargo capacity or the cargo area is limited by the shortness of the trunk compartment. But with that said, the fold-down seat reverses that problem in many ways. You can slide things in there, a pair of skis, maybe a giraffe if it was paralyzed. You could do a fine job hiding him in the back seat of this thing going to the drive-in movie. The only bummer is if you're traveling to the parts store with a fresh battery and it happens to tumble over, it's not secured. If the positive and negatives short out against the top of the gas tank, well, you might have a fire. But aside from that, it's a great dual-purpose utility use of a piece of metal. Henry Ford would love it. One thing about this car that is not factory stock, of course, or seen on the Bullitt Mustang that this car pays tribute to, is the blacked out tail panel right here. The Bullitt Mustang was actually Highland green down here as well, but this actually adds an element of sinisterness to it that I'm all for. It looks fantastic. So that's a look at the back here. The wheels and tires on this are classic. Let's look at them. They're American Racing torque thrust. In fact, the wheels used on the Steve McQueen Bullitt Mustang were similar to these. These are more modern torque thrust Ds. They're billet aluminum machined, and great looking wheels, more modern stuff with Cooper Cobra radial tires, 15 inches front and rear. Good gripping car. So again, a great example of a classic fastback Mustang. And again, these were not as popular as the coupes by any stretch of the imagination. And even these outsold convertibles for sure. But with that said, people with a lot of kids or growing families would not want to have a fastback. With that said, though, it's a beautiful car, nicely restored in the idiom of the Steve McQueen Bullitt Mustang, Highland green, V8, 4-speed, 5-speed, actually overdrive. Great looking car. You can check it out on the High-Octane Classics website with a whole bunch of photos in the gallery. Take a look.